So for you, all of you who don't know, Thomas runs the illustration-related sub-channel to Psych2Go called Sketch2Go, which aims to assist fans of Psych2Go wanting to learn more about creating art that resembles that of their favorite psychology channel. So welcome, Thomas.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me once again. And thank you to everyone who's in the audience right now. I'm sure there's going to be more people filing in as this goes on. But yeah, thank you so much. I know there's all sorts of people from all sorts of time zones. So I know even just in the Sketch2Go server, people were talking about how they're going to stay up to be in the audience for this, or how, like, even though the time zone's a little bit weird, they're still going to make it. So thank you to all of you, regardless of how difficult it was to be in the audience right now. Uh, Regardless of that, thank you. But especially those who are making that little special extra effort.
Yes, thank you all for being here. Thank you to the Psycho team also for organizing this, and of course to Thomas. So shall we just begin with just questions, learning about you, about art techniques, and finally about Psycho and art. Um, do you feel, do you all want me to like say each question, or should we just kind of run through a list? Should I post the questions and then we can just run through them? Like, how do you think? Um, how do you think is best for this?
Perhaps you can say the questions out loud, and then I can just like respond. Maybe we can just have the questions so that people can follow along if they want in the
Oh,
chat.
okay, sounds good. Yeah, sure. So yeah, people are saying to say the questions. So yeah, let's just dive in. Um, Want to tell us a bit about how you got started with making art?
Right. Sorry, didn't realize that was the question. But yes, how did I get started with making art? So I myself saw a lot of questions pertaining to this. They kind of ranged from like, when did you start making art, like, or what made you want to start making art, like from like birth, or like what made you want to get do art as like a kind of career thing, or like the thing that you do mainly. I suppose that the story is kind of the same for everyone. Sorry, I don't have like a cool answer for this, but it's just I literally, the moment I like picked up a pencil from when I was like one, and there was like an A4 sheet of paper, I just drew like stickman dinosaurs, and
Mhm.
that's what I did for like the first like 9 years of my life. No studying, no eating. I didn't really eat when I was a kid, but that was all I did. Drawing stickman dinosaurs, and then I eventually moved on to dinosaurs with like bones or muscles. But it was all dinosaurs for the first 14 or so years of my life. That's my very plain Jane boring answer, but it's the truth. By the way, for those of you listening, uh, we've kind of segmented the questions into three stages. So these first few questions are going to be about me myself. Then they're going to be about actual like art things, so things that people wanted to know about art, like advice, I suppose. And then the last kind of section would be more pertaining to the Psych2Go connection to the Sketch2Go channel. So you'll see what that kind of means specifically as the questions go on.
I'm sure a lot of people are also interested in the second question, which is, what is your favorite art style?
My favorite art style. Now, okay, this is kind of a difficult and this is not to like rag on the person who asked this, but this is kind of a difficult question and kind of a peculiarly worded question, I would say, because I tend not to try to think of things in art style, because the most important difference between art styles is that of the style difference between individuals, I would say. And so to make uh, broad strokes, to say like, I know people are trying to ask like, oh, do you like cartoony style, like Western cartoon, or like do you like anime style, or do you like realistic style? And I get that that's the kind of nuance of the question, but I generally enjoy. I know this is kind of a cop out answer, but I generally enjoy pretty much any style as long as it's done well. Maybe that's kind of elitist of me, but I can appreciate any well done art. I'm not okay. You know what? If Let me answer this by answering what I don't like. My only art style that I have a particular issue with not an issue, but I'm not a super huge fan of is actually like Western animation, especially like really modern Western animation. I know a lot of people say like Big Mouth, that kind of style is not particularly appealing. I've never been a huge fan of the Seth MacFarlane style, like the Family Guy, American Dad style. That kind of general look. Something about it, just like I don't mean this in like an offensive way, but it literally like evokes a visceral reaction in me where I kind of feel sick. So I actually can't watch a lot of Western cartoons for too long. Uh, I know I'm gonna get a lot of hate for this, but Steven Universe, the show is fine. A lot of the fan art, maybe I shouldn't go into that territory, but a lot of the fan art is people trying to copy the style, but they don't exactly know how to draw the style, so it ends up looking a bit awkward. And it's very specific to Steven Universe, and that's not a rip on their fans or the show. It's just like I've been exposed to a lot of weird fan art. Maybe that's a testament to the kind of corners of the internet that I've been on. But anyways,
Anyway, yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of different kind of variations, and so I wonder along the artists that you do appreciate and do look up to.
yeah, that's an interesting question. I I don't tend to. I probably should have like a favorite artist or illustrator that I look up to, just because like it helps. It really helps to like have a role model in anything. That being said, I suppose if I had to choose, I look up to a lot of webtoon artists, Korean webtoon artists, because they are kind of. It's not only that they're good at drawing; they're very good at drawing lots of things on a time crunch, very very consistently, and so that's something that I really respect, and seeing that kind of demand, like in their art style, it's like kind of almost like intrinsically ingrained in their art style. You can see it, like the kind of adaptations they've had to make to meet that demand. If they were just drawing like a commission or something and they had like a week to work on it, obviously they would draw it differently than how they are forced to draw because they have to pump out like however many panels of gorgeous webtoon every week. So there's a lot of webtoon artists that I look up to. I can't remember their names off the top of my head. I don't typically look at their names. Um, I'm sure a famous one that a lot of people know is I don't know what she's called in English. She's called Yaongi. She's the one who drew True Beauty. I'm sure a lot of people look up to her. A lot of aspiring webtoon artists look up to her. I just like her art because she's very good at drawing clothes, fashionable clothes. Her background is in actual fashion illustration. I also look up to a lot of official artists for video games. So I don't want to mess up his name, so I'm just gonna look it up real quick. I believe it's Yusuke Kozaki. He's the he's the artist for he's the official artist for the 3DS series of the Fire Emblem games, and I really like his style. So yeah, I suppose there's your answer. If there's any artists that I suppose would be my favorite, it'd be webtoon artists and most of the Nintendo artists actually.
Oh my God, I love Nintendo. Like the art is beautiful, and oh my God, so many people in the chat are mentioning webtoons. I agree, webtoon artists are amazing. God run. A lot of people appreciate it.
Pokemon Ultra Moon, yes, I am a huge Pokemon fan. Like Pokemon literally takes up like 90% of my life, 90% of my thoughts, like on a daily basis.
I love that.
So
Oh my God, we can have conversations forever about Pokemon. I
yeah,
love
oh my god.
Pokemon so
Oh,
much. I
yo,
actually
oh my god, we
3D
should.
printed. So I actually have like a 3D printed glow in the dark Charmander
No
in my
way. Oh my
room.
god.
Love it. But anyways, we digress. A lot of people are also quite interested in what keeps you personally motivated, and inspired to make art.
Yeah, I saw a lot of questions pertaining to this while the questions were still being were still available to be submitted. So this kind of ties hand in hand to, and I know a lot of people ask this, how do I prevent burnout, or how do I deal with burnout when it comes? First of all, to address that, it's a little bit of a tangent to the actual question itself, but it's related. To prevent to deal with burnout, I usually just try to prevent it and I usually do that by scheduling. I'm not super organized by nature. I'm not super conscientious by nature, but I the utility of scheduling is very it almost can't be overstated. I and the key to scheduling is to give yourself a schedule that you can actually deal with. You can't just be like, oh, like study for 8 hours. That's my schedule. It's like, that's not a schedule. That's
Yeah.
like I give myself a schedule that's like, okay, like I will do drawing practice for an hour, maybe sometimes even 30 minutes. I only schedule, and then like nap for 3 hours, and then
Love that.
cook for an hour. Yeah. And it's like I can follow that. That's a decent schedule. And then I find that once I start like actually drawing, it's like, oh, I can cut into the nap time to keep drawing. This is actually kind of fun. Of course, you shouldn't deviate too far even off from your scheduled playtime, because one of the biggest efficiency boosters for people who are hyper conscientious is to actually schedule off time for them. And so being able to stick to a schedule of work but also play is very important. So that's one way I keep motivated in that sense. The other way I keep motivated is basically, I don't know, I hesitate to give unsolicited advice in this kind of realm, but I kind of have a set of kind of short and medium term motivations, and I have a very long term motivation. So short term motivations, I can kind of just like, when I'm feeling like, oh my god, I don't want to do anything, then I can kind of just pull those out of the reserves, pull one of those out and be like, no, but you have to do it because like, remember those times that you like go to exercise without having done all your work? That always feels really bad, doesn't it? I don't want to feel bad. So that's my term motivation. But medium term motivation would be something like money. Um, Long term motivation would be like my long term career goals. And so keeping those in mind, like envisioning myself 5 years from now being like, if I just like don't be a lazy jerk for like every day for 5 years versus if I just do what I need to do every day for 5 years, like this the starkness of that difference alone, when I imagine it, is enough to motivate me most of the time. So, and I know that doesn't work for everyone, and I suppose this question was kind of asked in a kind of uh, projecting sense, also to ask for advice for this, at least for some of the people who asked it. But you have to find what works for yourself if you're asking for advice. If you're just asking for me, yeah, that's how I do it.
Yeah, just out of curiosity as well, is there any sort of like apps that you use that help you organize? Because I personally use Google Calendar. I find it very helpful. Maybe other artists here or aspiring artists might find it useful to see.
Google Calendar is really useful. Yeah, I actually use like a combination of stuff because I have my brain is working on like CPU 110% all the time. So like sometimes I forget stuff. So I have like the calendar app on my phone. I have Google Calendar. I send myself text reminders on my phone. Sometimes they're scheduled. Sometimes they're just like there. I have the biggest asset that I have probably is my physical planner, like a book that I write in.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Even for people who aren't organized, even just things like this, like texting yourself reminders, makes a big difference. Like I didn't go from like being, because I was like super like what do you call it, lackadaisical, and I wouldn't set any reminders or anything like that. I just kind of keep it all in my head and like not really. I just kind of go with the flow. That's a good skill to a degree because you can be adaptable, but being not scheduled at all or not organized at all is a bit of an unneeded detriment to yourself. So I started with just text reminders to myself. Then I eventually moved on to using that in tandem with calendars, in tandem with Google Calendar, in tandem with the planners, the physical planners that I use. And so it was like a process. But now, the position that I'm at right now, I use mostly a physical planner and texting myself.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I think it's about like figuring out what works for you, right? For anything. So it's pretty useful to know. And so within that time of, all the things that you've created, I'm going to question 6. Which is your favorite piece that you've done?
That's very usually when you ask someone this question and they create things, what's the favorite thing that you've done? It's either like their first thing or their latest thing. Because like just because like when you look at old stuff that you've made, you look at it and you're like, oh my god, like oh, why did I ever think this was good? Like oh my god, I want to like delete this, bro. Like, but that being said, I don't post my art on social media or any sort of platform of that sort. So that's not really an issue with me. I don't even know what the latest thing I've drawn is, but I suppose my favorite thing I've drawn was actually okay. I have two things favorite things I've drawn. One is like a funny one, and one is like a sentimental one. The funny one was this is not gonna make sense to anyone, but there's this really old meme from like 2006, from like a Fire Emblem meme. Fire Emblem is a for those in the audience who don't know, it's this Nintendo game series. It's like a strategy game, but there's like characters. They're like anime characters. And there's this like meme where like one of the main characters they drew him like with like an extendo neck for no reason, and then I just drew that, and that I swear that's only funny to me. Like even I'm describing it and it doesn't sound funny, and then if you actually look at the thing, it's not funny. It's legit just like something that tickles me individually. So that's my favorite thing on the funny side. And the sentimental side, I actually very recently drew a VTuber model. For those of you who don't know, a VTuber is a 2D or 3D model that's rigged to motion capture, and a streamer puts their own movements into the software or computer, and that translates into the avatar on screen moving. So it's as if you're watching an anime character or a cartoon character play a game or do a stream. And I was fortunate enough to be able to draw a VTuber model, and it's I don't really know how to like give a satisfactory answer to this question because it's not like I can really do you think there's a way I can visually show like what
Yeah, perhaps you can share.
this
Can you share screen? Is that even a possibility? Or maybe just post, if you can post like kind of like animated things in the chat, maybe? Because
yeah,
that sounds so cool. When you're describing it, it's my first time hearing of that. And I'm very interested to see what it looks like.
for sure.
Does it work in the event chat? Or no, you can just drag and drop.
Yeah, I'll probably just drag and drop a picture of the VTuber. It To answer your question, Mitchie, it's not myself. That'd be cool to be a VTuber, but I'm much too busy at the moment to think about doing that. But let's see if I can find the actual
Okay.
art of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sounds good. We can pin it up later when
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
share it. So I think at this time we can kind of shift more into the questions around art techniques. And a lot of common ones involve, well, number one, how do I improve shading? And then we'll go into like color and all these kind of things.
Sounds good. Shading. So the To answer your question, Zay, real quick, yes, it's that one. Enough, brother. You're starting to anger me. Anyways, shading. This is a question I get a lot. If you're literally just starting, you should probably focus on hard shadows more than soft shadows. Soft shadows are like a entirely like it's like a world of its own. Hard shadows are typically what you want to focus on because it teaches you not only like how to do hard shadows, but it also teaches you how to prioritize what to draw because kind of the attention budget any given artist can give to their piece is it's always limited, right? You can't draw every single last molecule in the object or person that you want to draw. And so you have to choose what you want to draw, what's the most important things. And usually the things that you want to draw are the points of highest contrast. And so the points of highest contrast are most likely going to be things like contours and where there are hard shadows. So that teaches you a very valuable skill in allocating your attention to the most important parts of the drawing. In terms of a little bit more practical things, rather than theoretical things, if you're doing digital art, one thing I would recommend is literally never use gradients to shade. It never looks good, pretty much. Unless you really know what you're doing, and it's like an After Effect thing, or like you really know what you're doing. But I would recommend, if you're trying to learn shading, don't use a gradient in digital art. If you're using pencils or pencil crayons, when you're shading, in general, don't like press too hard, and also don't use. I keep giving a lot of don'ts, so I feel kind of bad about that. But it's not highly recommended, personally, that you shade with. This might make a little less sense when I explain it only verbally, but if you're trying to shade something red with a darker red, I would say go with like a deeper red rather than a blacker red. If you shade things with everything just a blacker version of the color, it can make things look a little muddy. So I would say go with like a little more, still vibrant but darker color. That being said, don't make the shade more vibrant than they highlight, because then it'll end up looking weird. But that's my advice there that I can give offhand.
Okay, so if we're thinking more of like selecting the colors that you were saying, how do we effectively choose good color schemes?
Uh,
That's the second question.
to be honest, if you're like a beginner or intermediate artist, you can just steal palettes from drawings that you like. Because these people, because like palettes don't just like, you don't just like choose colors and they happen to be good. Palettes are actually something that people like consider for a pretty long time, right before they actually start drawing or while they're drawing. If you don't really have the eye for it yet, and it's something you can develop. If you don't have the eye for it yet, then it's something that you can just like fake it till you make it kind of thing. And then, so let's just say you've been using a bunch of references, or to put it another way, you're stealing a bunch of palettes, and you draw a lot of drawings like that. Eventually, you're going to build up this kind of visual library in your head of like, okay, I know what kind of colors look nice together intrinsically, so I will continue using those. So for a dark scene, I remember I stole these colors, and then you can kind of use those. Obviously, you're not going to, maybe sometimes you'll miss, and that's part of the learning process too. But I would say, honestly, if you're just starting out and trying to find attractive color palettes, either steal a color palette from something you like, or go with something that's like, that can't fail. So for example, like all pastel colors. That's usually pretty safe.
Oh, did you see? You have fan art.
Yeah,
Please
oh
help
my
us with
god.
fan
I was freaking out. I was crying and like sharding myself. Like I remember she sent that over, and I was like, I couldn't believe it. Like I thought like, cuz I saw it in the Sketch2Go community page, but I thought it was like art that she had previously made. But she was like, "No, it's you," and I was like, "Oh my god!" So I was crying.
art. Oh, yeah, sorry for going off on a tangent, but I saw that and I was like, oh my God, that is so, so cute. I had to bring it up
It
anyway.
is so cute. No, thank you for bringing it up. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much. Right, back on topic. Any tips on how to make clean line art? Because I think that's what we start with, right? Like doing the borders and everything first before going into. I have no knowledge of art, so you're the expert.
No, yeah. Oh, that's like the general process. Of course, there are exceptions, but uh, if on a generic level, the answer to that would be just make your strokes fast and confident. Make sure your pressure settings aren't like whack. Make your strokes fast and confident. And you don't have to connect every line. If you You don't have to. So a trap that a lot of people fall into is they end up making things look weird because they're trying to connect every single line together. You don't necessarily need to do that. Another trap that some people fall into is that if your style is, or like the way that you draw is not conducive to a drawing where you're drawing outlines, like you don't necessarily super need to draw outlines. I know in some of these Sketch2Go videos that are like 3 artists, 1 prompt, I make multiple drawings where I don't actually put the outline. The outline just kind of happens after I color things in. So that's another way. That's like painting. If you're going for more like drawing, or if you're talking about pencils, then yeah, fast, confident. I specialized when I was doing traditional art. I specialized in charcoals. So what you do with charcoals, you actually kind of like you do your rough lines. Usually all of them are straight, and then like you shave them down with an eraser. So you can do that too. And there's a lot of ways to go about it, but as long as it ends up looking clean, it doesn't really matter how you got there as long as your workflow is not super inefficient or anything like that. So the sleepy head that can't sleep. Just mention. Sometimes I feel like the sketch is better than my finished drawing. That's super common, and that even happens to me like all the time. Because like the sketch, the reason why most of the time is that the sketch is a lot more messier, and so your brain kind of just makes an image out of the lines, and so there's a lot more benefit of the doubt when there is a sketch, because you're like, oh, I mean, like, I guess that is there, or I guess that ends there, or that looks like that. But when you solidify it into actual lines, everything is intentional, so that if there's something wrong, there's no more benefit of the doubt. There's no more ways to see it differently. It's like that's how it is. So you're kind of stuck with that. So that's why a lot of the time the finished drawing actually sometimes looks inferior to one's eye than the sketch.
Hey, that was a really cool explanation. Like with the mind kind of like filling in. Like,
Oh,
I never
thank
even
you.
realized that. Super cool. Should we dive into more like animation kind of questions now? Because I think
Sure
it's a
thing.
very broad one, but someone asked like how do you animate? I think there's a lot of different levels we can or perspectives in which we can tackle this, from like the tools you use to actually how does it work. Whatever you feel like, whatever angle you'd like to tackle this question, and I think would be great.
Sure. How do I animate? So I guess I'll answer this on a kind of second person scale. How do I animate? Um, I personally use, and it's not because I use Clip Studio Paint first of all as my program of choice. Sometimes I use Adobe Premiere just for like motion tweening stuff. But I use Clip Studio Paint, and that's not because I think it's the most superior program or the most optimal thing to do. It's just because like I know how to do it, so I just use it, and it's what I used to draw usually anyway, so it's just easy to do that. I usually do just traditional animation, which is a little time consuming. It's a little difficult. If you want to animate, how does one animate? Easier than you think. I would say if you're just starting, don't don't first of all, don't really try to do like too ambitious stuff. You can easily tell a story without moving a character a lot, and it's easier than you think to get away with that. I made a whole video about it, but basically you can kind of just like you can tell a story, and even people will come out of it thinking, "Oh yeah, that was an animated story or an animated video." You can make an animated story pretty easily without actually having to animate too much, but you'll still have basic principles of animation down. Things like timing, things like composition, things like movement. You can do movement without actually animating it yourself, drawing a new frame. You can do that with with a thing called motion tweening. Yeah, so there's a lot of ways to animate without it being a total like bore. Yeah, like Red has said in the chat, animatics are a really good example. You can kind of just like go from scene to scene, and as long as you make the individual scenes like engaging enough, a lot of the times people won't really notice. Like, oh wait, yo, that was like not an animation. That was you can get away with a lot, and that's what I have to say about that.
So I have a kind of a personal interest question.
Hmm.
To what extent is, I guess, the finished piece carried by the story versus carried by the animation, or is it kind of like both are equally important? Which would you recommend a beginner to start with?
I would start with, if a beginner to start with, I would go with, if you're trying to practice storytelling, then go with the story thing. If you're literally just trying to practice animation, so like, like traditional animation, uh, you're most of the time, a lot of the drills used for animation don't really have a story behind them. Like they're like bouncing balls, walk cycles, um, lip syncing, stuff like that. And so you don't really have an option there. But if you're kind of just starting out making story animations and you want to decide either if you want to focus more on making a pretty animation versus making a pretty story, I would say go with the story, just because if you have a solid foundation in your story, you know what to do with your drawings. For example, if you have a really pretty animation, but it doesn't really make sense to the story, like everything is moving really frantically and beautifully animated, but it's kind of supposed to be like, that's not the tone, then obviously your animation has a lower effectiveness than something that might have been more calm, more story driven, more emotionally driven, but it's not as active or it's not as impressively animated. That could potentially be more effective just because you knew what the goal was. So yeah, I would say always go with what makes it easier to achieve. Stay focused on your goal.
Okay, got you. So, kind of relating to the idea of like improving in art, would you say that the approach to improve with like semi-realism versus cartoon versus like realism styles is the same? Like, do you go through the same process or is it kind of different? And this is question five, by the way, for anyone asking, because I've gotten out of order.
Yeah. I have a personal bias when I answer this question because I started out when I actually got serious about art. I started out by learning like realistic things, and that gave me a base to be able to know what exactly I'm drawing, even when I'm drawing things that are cartoony or anime style. Because you can easily start from just like drawing cartoons and then just getting really good at them, or just start drawing anime and getting really good at that style. Me personally, I found it very useful to have the knowledge base that realism provided. Because if I'm drawing a cartoon, like an arm is an arm, right? It's like if you draw an arm in a cartoon but it looks weird, it's like there's a realism basis for the why we are perceiving that as a weirdly drawn arm, right? It's not like, oh, it's a cartoon, it just works. Arms work differently in cartoons, you can draw them differently. It's like not necessarily, because anime, semi-realism, cartoon are all truncated versions of realism, right? And so if you want to draw a truncated version of realism, obviously it would be useful to know how to draw in a realistic style. And then from there, kind of allocating your attention, as I said, like knowing where to simplify is up to the artist. Usually, though, people know where to simplify just because we've been exposed to kind of how the experts simplify. So we see in anime, like for example, people tend to simplify like, okay, I realize that I can just simplify on the mouth and the nose. Anime eyes and nose, or sorry, mouths and noses aren't too complicated, but they don't tend to simplify. For example, on the eyes, they put an emphasis on the eyes, and that's very intentional. That comes after years and years of kind of cultural evolution of like what sticks and what doesn't, and what tends to have stuck is people don't really need to see the nose and mouth in detail, but people tend to like to see the eyes in detail. People tend to like to see the hair in detail. People tend to like to see the limbs still maintain proper proportions, stuff like that.
So with these all requiring a significant amount of time and I would say resilience too, to a certain extent, because you know when things don't turn out the way that you imagine it can be kind of discouraging, right? So what is your advice for those people who feel like they shouldn't even bother trying because it's too late or that they're discouraged? And that is question seven, by the way, for those following the list.
Yeah, for people who feel like it's too late, I would say evaluate your motivations. I mean, for some, maybe the right answer is like, you don't have to pursue art to have a satisfying life. If you're gonna start art and just be frustrated by it, I would say like maybe evaluate like how worth it that particular pursuit is. If you really do want to make art, but you feel discouraged about like, oh my god, everyone's better than me, or like, oh my god, like I don't even know where to start, like, or I'm so far and I don't know, I can't see myself like ascending that mountain. I have a few things to say about that. One, I saw this comic that was like how artists think that people perceive their work. And then there was like a dude, and he was bringing a cake to like a cake competition or a banquet or something. And then he was like, and he saw this gigantic wedding cake, and his was like a 1 layer cake. And he's like, oh man, this guy's cake is way better than mine. And then the next panel is like how other people perceive your art. And they see the guy's cake and the big cake, and the guy's just like, oh sweet, 2 cakes. So I would say like you're when you're thinking like that, like I hesitate to say this so brazenly, but people who are thinking like that are a little bit in their heads. Like it's not as bad as you think. At the same time, yeah, evaluate your motivations, because a lot of people, a lot of young people especially, want to get into art because they want to post it. And if you're posting it as like a self gallery thing, like you just want to have it for keepsakes, then that's fine. But if your motivation is tied to kind of clout and stuff, which isn't bad, it's not inherently bad. Like I'd love to get clout for my art, which is kind of what I'm doing right now. But like I don't post it on social media. You have to realize that that's not the game you're playing. You're not playing a game of how good is my art. You're playing a game of marketing, and how good your art is just a marketing asset, as would be something like startup capital or something like that. So you're kind of evaluating your art's worth by you're evaluating the quality of your art by the result of your marketing, which is kind of like it's like kind of incongruous. So you should evaluate your motivations there. For people who, so I saw in the chat like, where was it? Someone brought up a very specific but common thing. Yeah, feeling like giving up when no one sees your art, so it's kind of pointless to try to stand out. I stuck through kind of there's always this like learning curve part, and like the hardest part of the curve is like right before you feel like you're like you get it, you can see other people's art and you can tell why it's good, and then you look at your own art and you can tell why it's unsatisfactory. I would say it's kind of something that you just have to like tough out, and you have to be patient with yourself, because I mean, based on the channel demographics of Sketch2Go, at least, a lot of you are really, really young, so you have a lot of time. And if you have an improvement mindset rather than a results mindset, then that helps a lot. So that's my take on that.
Oh, yes, mindset, so important. I feel like just for anything and everything, pretty much. And so I feel like perhaps this is a good time to kind of transition into Psych2Go and art and viewing. Perhaps question one, your thoughts about art as a therapeutic outlet. So yeah, the question, just to say it succinctly for those following, is question one: what are your thoughts about art as a therapeutic outlet?
Art as a therapeutic outlet. I don't have any expert knowledge on this, so I'm not going to talk about anything like clinical in that regard. I will say it is a stress reliever for me, just because I relieve my stress, or I find pleasure in completing tasks. Like that's just kind of the personality that I have. And so completing tasks means like overcoming difficulties, or like humans intrinsically are motivated by like two big things. One is fitting in, and one is moving towards goals. Not necessarily the completion of goals, but moving towards them. And so I feel like art is a good, what would you say? Art is a good, for lack of better terms, thing to strive towards, and the the striving towards of something is something that is intrinsically healing, is intrinsically motivating, is intrinsically good for people. That being said, I can understand that art sometimes can get stressful. So and there's a degree to which stress is a good thing in people's lives, because like you kind of need the kick in the pants sometimes. And stress hormone is what wakes people up in the morning, for example, right? So like that it's a, you can't live without it. But I would say also the study of art for me has also been a very therapeutic experience in a kind of like, in not the traditional sense. So I'm really into art history. So kind of being able to think of art in an outside of the box kind of way has helped me think of the rest of my life in an outside of the box kind of way. And it's not like I intentionally kind of like, well, I thought about art like this, now I'm going to think about the stuff in my life like this. It's kind of like it gave me a mindset change that just incidentally was applied to the rest of my life. So what I mean by this is something like, for example, there's a piece by Mondrian. It's very famous. I believe it's called Composition in Red, Black, and Yellow, or something like that. Composition, Red, Black, Yellow. Sorry, I'm looking it up because I don't want to look like a dummy. Composition with red, yellow, and blue. Okay, so there's no black there. There is black in the actual piece. That's why I got confused. But it's basically, so people, when they look at art, and especially modern art, they're like, yes, what do you think it represents? Or like, what do you think the artist was feeling when they drew it? And it's like, this piece was intentionally made to not be that at all. It was, the artist's goal was to try to make a piece that was so devoid of soul that it was literally just like colors on a canvas, that there was no interpretation for it. And it's like, that's still art. So it's like, dang, like, like that's what art can be. And kind of getting into the mindset that allows you to accept that gets you into the same mindset that allows you to get through a lot of other stuff. For me personally, that's kind of really helped change my mind perspective on a lot of things in life in general. I know this kind of sounds a bit like hyperbole, but it is true. So that's my take on art as therapy.
Oh, nice. It's amazing. I feel like I should probably have a look at art history. I've only studied music history in the past, and frankly, I can't remember much of it. To hear that art history has had such a big impact on you is like pretty cool. So now we're going to dive into more like the Psych2Go kind of questions, as many of the Psych2Goers are curious to know what got you into Psych2Go. How did you get started?
Right. What got me into Psych2Go? I'm assuming this means like how did I end up in this like particular position?
Yeah.
So I started out as an animation tutor, like an in-house animation tutor for the main channel. And I also happened to be fluent in Korean, so I was also handling I just like on the side was handling any Korean communication that came in from like emails. So like if a Korean company was like, "Hey, we want to like advertise or something," then we'd be like, "Oh, okay." Now we have someone to be like, "Okay." So that was me. And I was also tutoring animation on the side. After I had finished kind of the tutoring thing, that Korean communication thing became bigger. And as I kind of, and it was kind of a perfect storm of things. So basically, long story short, that combination of having that experience with email communication and handling the animation tutoring converged into the current position now, where I am currently handling the hiring process for new animators. And so that doesn't really answer the question. I just realized, how did I get into Psych2Go? There was they posting on the community tab, and I answered it. That's it.
It's so cool to see like the evolution of, starting as a tutor and then going to do emails and then now actually recruiting for new animators. That's just it's such a cool growth story.
Yeah, I
Love
know,
it.
right? It's surreal. Even when I think about it, I'm like, damn, like that's me.
Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, so the next question is actually, I think it's quite similar to the ones earlier, so we're just going to skip along. Someone was curious to know, have you ever thought of being a voice actor for Psych2Go videos? People seem to really like your voice in comments.
Well, first of all, thank you to everyone who likes my voice. I see all the comments. A little bit of some of them are a little bit extreme, but thank you. They're compliments nonetheless, so I very much appreciate them. Yeah, I've been told like IRL that like people like at the store and they're like, oh, you should do radio. I'm like, thanks, and then I leave with my chips. But like I have been actually they have actually suggested for me to do voiceover on Psych2Go. I declined because I didn't want to have the videos suddenly have this like jarring male voice when we've had mostly, as far as I know, only exclusively like soft female voices. So I didn't want to be like, "Hey, Psych2Go, like welcome back to another video." That'd be a bit jarring. Also, I was a little bit busy, and also I'm glad you guys like that. And also I actually did do a voice project for the main channel one time. I don't think it's up anymore. It was just like a temporary thing. It was the announcement video for the mascot drawing contest that occurred, I believe, in November or October. I don't even remember when that was, but I actually did do that. So I suppose the answer to this question is what was the question again? Have you ever thought about being a voice actor for Psych2Go? I've thought about it. I've definitely thought about it. Then the preceding thought was no, not right now.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people are happy if you do decide to one day. As you see in the comments, people are like, "Oh my god!" So yeah, with 5 minutes left, we're just going to ask the final question, which is: are there any exciting projects coming up or anything that you'd like to share to the Psych2Goers?
Yo, whoever asked this question is a G. Like, thank you. This is plug time. Sketch2Go on the channel. Lots of exciting videos cooking up. I know I haven't uploaded in like 2 weeks, but lots of exciting stuff coming up. It's because I keep getting motivations to write different scripts. And so right now I have like 4 completed scripts, but they all were written concurrently. So there was this long period of just no releasing videos. I should have wrote them sequentially. I should have wrote one, finished it, wrote the other, but they all came to me at the same time. So that's coming up. Also in the Sketch2Go server, pretty much right after this AMA is over, we're going to be announcing a Discord emote challenge. So what you guys submit as art in the challenge could potentially be used as Discord emotes in our server. This has been a request that's been super popular. Everyone wants custom emotes, so you guys can help make the emotes. I'm going to make some too. It's not like I'm just like handing off the work to you guys, but hopefully that's going to be a lot of fun. Also, as I mentioned, I did make a model for a VTuber. So while I feel weird shilling that, I still do like really believe in the project. But yeah, that's a VTuber, Aurora Farina. She's I believe she's debuting. She's releasing her first video on Friday, so that's fun.
So there's 3 things for you all to visit after this, and of course the emote contest as well. Very fun. I think that concludes all the questions. I hope you all had a good learning experience and a good time. Thank you so much, Thomas. I also hope you had a good time doing this and interacting with the Psych2Goers here.
Yes, thank you so much once again for your time, and thank all of you guys so much for attending. Thank you all also, like everyone who just was able to make this possible, even if they're not here right now. Huge shout outs to Miss Kiko for making this all, for kind of lighting the spark for all of this. But yeah, I enjoyed this thoroughly. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kiko. Thank you, Thomas. Hope to see you in a future event.
Yeah.
Bye.
Sounds good. Bye, everyone. Yo, how do I leave? I don't know how to leave this. There's no like end call button. Open the pod. Like the escape pod? How do I leave? Exit quietly. I certainly didn't do that. I'm exiting quite cacophonously. Okay, bye, guys.